Welcome to the BS Machine. This is your host, Tommy Kendi. I will be your guide through these episodes in 2023. One of the cool things about the BS Machine is that you always get some sort of gold out of every episode. Whether I'm getting guests on, and they're not just any guests, they are guests that have a cool story. Or whether it's me talking and giving you all my wisdom and all the things I've learned in life. Either way, there's always one piece of gold you'll take away from these episodes. So please enjoy and welcome to the BS Machine. G'day everyone, welcome to episode number 121 at the BS Machine. Honour to be here with you. I'm your host Tommy Kendi, and I've got a very special guest on our episode today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Her name's Simi, and she is she calls herself a holistic relationship coach, but she's a relationship coach, and she's got a fucking cool story, I reckon. And we've only met a couple of times, but we sort of connected last week, and I was like, you know what, come on. She's like, Joe, yeah, let's go. And then we just sort of came together, and I'm super excited to have her on because I love talking about subjects where, I love talking to people that are no BS because they actually tell us what the actual deal is. But I also love talking about things that a lot of people fucking struggle with. And one of those things are relationships. And I think in relationships, there's a lot of sort of unsaid things, and there's a lot of weirdness that happens in relationships, and I really want to explore that with Simi today because she's definitely a very successful at what she does, and so I love bringing people on and picking their brain to see what's going on. So, ladies and gentlemen, warm and fuzzy welcome to Simi. Welcome, Simi. Good to have you.
Yay. Thanks, Tommy. I'm super excited to be here. I'm so excited just to be on a podcast and talk without a filter. So I think that this is going to be a spicy and a good episode and really kind of get to the crux of everything that everyone's struggling with nowadays, which is learning to love, really.
Yeah. And Simi, you're the founder of JAH Academy. Just tell us what's JAH Academy and how did it come about? What's up with it?
So JAH Academy, JAH itself stands for just about healing. So I am a holistic relationship counsellor. For those that don't know, that's not a family and marriage therapist. What a holistic relationship counsellor does is we work with the individual about what subconscious programming is holding them back, because I personally believe from my own journey and my own story and working with clients that I can give a couple all the positive tools in the world, but if you've still got all this baggage that you've been holding on to for 10, 20, 30 years, what's going to be stronger? In times of stress and our nervous systems are up, those old habits are going to win. So a big part of what I do is teaching people who may not have been modeled healthy relationships that there is a chance and there is a way, and you're totally in control, just like you were with your own inner healing journey. And JAH itself is just about healing. So I don't take bias in someone who is, an anxious attachment because I'm an anxious attachment. It's there for everyone and everyone not to be judged, and everyone, no matter what they're going through, feels like they are seen, heard, validated, and also given tools and help. And it's not a shameful place. It's just a place of here's what you can do about it.
Yeah, love it. And you know what's funny? I reckon every Tom, Dick, and Harry these days is some type of fucking coach. And I mean, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because there's so many different coaches, and everyone thinks they're like the master, and it's like you got to do it the way I tell you, and that's just the way it is. The first question I've got is, what made you want to coach people in relationships? What drew you to that?
So that really comes from my own personal story. So my own personal story is I really suffered with mental illness for about 15 years, which is a long freaking time. And I constantly was getting triggered and having like extremely bad triggers to the point where I was like suicidal. Like, it was fucked. And, you know, I was seeing psychologists after psychiatrists, and, you know, they were like, oh, you have this, oh, you have that. And I'm like, you know what? How unfortunate that I went through everything I went through in my childhood, and now I'm also have these mental conditions. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, these aren't just coming up out of nowhere. Like, there's an incident and then there's a reaction. So I basically wasn't happy with what they told me and started studying my own self and reading all these books and learning everything. And I learned about anxious attachment, and that hugely changed the game for me. And that's what I realized was predominantly my issue. And from there, over like the course of like a year, I was just doing self-study. This wasn't to be a counselor or anything yet. And then it's interesting because all the people that originally were helping me with my mental health were like, Simi, I've got this issue with this guy and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, me? Like, and they're like, no, but now you know the answers. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then that kind of triggered me to go back and get my master's in holistic counseling and, you know, tick all the 3-dimensional boxes that we need to, so that I could get into that space and like help other people.
And when you talk about anxious attachments, what is that? Because I actually haven't heard of that. I mean, I can sort of assume what it is, but what is that?
So when it comes to attachment styles, these are predominantly given to us from our childhood. However, they can occur like later in life if there's like relationship trauma, like being cheated on, etc. And basically what it is the way that we connect with, when we're children, our primary caregivers, or as after puberty, our romantic partners. So as a child, if your needs aren't responded to in like a timely manner, you basically get like, your nervous system's just like a wreck. Like, you don't know how to self-soothe, and when someone can't be there to like co-regulate you, you basically feel like you're dying. Like, it's like the worst anxiety of your life, and you're like, I've just got to call this person, I've just got to text this person, I've got to co-regulate with them, I need them. So someone who's an anxious attachment kind of leans in way too much in relationships because they don't believe that they can face the world and their problems on their own. Someone who
which as we all know is such a fucking turn off. Like, isn't it funny that as soon as someone's like fully like on you, it's like, what are you doing? Where you know, and it's like that. It's just like, get the fuck away from me.
Yeah, that was me. Put me in the bin.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's anxious, and then avoidant attachments, like they have kind of had like their needs neglected a lot and had to learn how to like self-soothe. So instead of like wanting to co-regulate, when there's too much co-regulation, they pull away, and like every time they go through something hard, they're like, nut boundary, nut wall, because they just want space and to do it themselves. So and there's
that's all. Yeah, and that's also super annoying, because when you're in a relationship and you really care about someone and they pull away, like that's also, it's like, whoa, it just makes you feel so ungrounded, doesn't it? Like when someone pulls away, then, you know, I reckon I've been there as well. When partners have pulled away, then I've stepped into that anxious, like trying to move forward more so in past relationships where, you know, you have a partner and you're attached to the fact that they're your fucking partner, you know, and as soon as they pull away, you're like, no, come back, you know, and the opposite. And when, like, because I've been definitely in situations where I've pulled away and my partner's just like, come at me, and I'm like, dude, I just need fucking space. You know, so I, just on that, before we go any further, is the right thing to do, just to be upfront and open and just say, hey, do you know what? I actually just need a bit of space. Are you cool just to leave me the fuck alone for a little bit? Or what's the deal? What's the best sort of language around that?
So this is the thing. The biggest thing is whether you're noticing yourself like leaning in too much, is to go like, hey, I need to self-regulate myself. So you actually then ask for space and like go back and do it on your own, so that you kind of break that pattern, really. And then if you're pulling back too much, you can have space. Having space is totally fine, but you've got to communicate it. Otherwise, your partner is just going to feel emotionally abandoned by you, and it's just going to make them come at you more. Where if you tell them straight up, like, hey, this is the need, then you kind of can get the result that you want.
And so, like, talking about communication, you know, there's such an interesting thing in relationships, because it doesn't matter what you learn about communication, there's always two people that have different ways of communicating. So how do you arrive at a common way of communication?
So that's like a tricky one, because the way that we all communicate is different. So we can be like what's called a fast processor. So a fast processor is someone that can, like, and this isn't the same as attachment styles, is someone that can basically like have a situation and think about it really quickly and know exactly what to say and communicate it really clearly. And then you have a slow processor, and a slow processor will get there, but they kind of need to throw it around in their head for a while and like come up with like an answer. So the best kind of way to figure or meet these kind of needs of each other is to study yourself and your partner and learn, like, okay, what attachment style are we? What kind of processor are we? And then that way you can kind of find a healthy middle ground that works for you. And these aren't things that are set in stone, by the way. Like, even with attachment styles, you're a pendulum. Like, you will swing and change in different circumstances. But as long as you can kind of go, okay, yeah, like for me, I know that now I'm a secure attachment, but in times of stress, I can swing back to anxious quite easily. And I also know that I am a fast processor, so I just come at you like, I want to sort it out, tell me straight away, you know what I mean? And it's like, I have to just be aware of that and make the changes, because that's terrifying.
Yeah. And then so when you realize that you're being in that attachment style, like, yeah, obviously secure attachment is your best place to be, right? And you're probably there 80% of the time. But when you do step into that place of anxious attachment or avoidance, then what do? Do you just observe it and go, all right, what do you do then when you're in that dysfunction?
So even now, when I fall into that, and a lot of my clients, after they've done the inner work around it and kind of fully understood it and processed the emotions, you can get to a place where you're more of an observer or a witness to what's happening. So I'm able to see like the dysregulation in myself, and I'm able to kind of go, okay, like, what do I need to do? I need to like express I need some space, go to yoga, zen the fuck out, and then think about this with a clear mind. So it's like you become a witness, and then you kind of follow a plan to, instead of knowing that these old coping strategies that you learned through childhood are just going to destroy every relationship that you have, basically.
And what's your experience in relationships?
So I naturally, because of like my anxious attachment, had a lot of really negative relationships. A lot of what I post isn't stuff that like I've just read about in a textbook. Like, this is stuff I went through. Like, that's why there's no shame, because I'm like, honey, I did this too, you know.
So wait, can you tell us, when you were in your anxious attachment, can you tell us like what's the like tip of the iceberg that you went to? Like, were you like a full crazy ass?
Not a full crazy ass, but I was like, there's a thing called a protest behavior, and a protest behavior for an anxious attachment is, Tommy, I want you to connect with me, but instead of like, and regulate me, but instead of me saying that, I'm going to do things that make you reconnect with me. And I might do that through like then playing like, by then not responding to you, to try and like slingshot you back to me. Or I might like...
So play the game.
Yeah, I might put up photos with me and another guy so that you contact me. So I think that it was a lot of, for me, more like tit for tat rather than anything full-blown crazy. But yeah, that's that wasn't healthy.
No. And so did you move into wanting to learn about, I guess, a holistic relationship to give yourself the opportunity to find love? Or what is, I mean, tell us a bit more about your journey.
Yeah, so I I was always very lucky. Like, I had long-term relationships. They just probably weren't conscious or healthy. Like, there was a lot of like unsaid things, a lot of built up resentment, and they would kind of get to this point of always like an explosion and then come back together, be good for like a couple of weeks, repeat the cycle. And particularly when I was struggling with my mental health, it was always around those things. So for me, it was actually more of trying to gain an understanding of like, why do I keep doing this? And then when, I'm doing these protest behaviors and they're not responding the way I want to, why is it like the end of the world? So for me, it was more about actually understanding myself, because I felt so unlovable. Like, I felt like, what's so wrong with me? Everyone else seems to have this figured out. I don't. So in my last previous relationship, we were together while I started going on this journey. And basically, it was quite interesting dynamic, really, because that obviously shifted our relationship a lot. Like, I went from like the super unhealthy one to like the healthy one, which was, interesting.
And is that why you guys broke up?
Yeah. I've never actually... Sorry?
Yeah, no, what were you saying? You never what?
I've never actually addressed it, but originally, like, on the set of JAH, people would have seen it was always like content with me and my ex. And then we kind of broke up because I had become the healthy one and I was doing all this stuff with JAH, and I just don't think that we aligned anymore together. Like, I was kind of going this way, but I didn't feel that, we were both kind of growing on the same trajectory.
Gotcha. So then, because this is the interesting part, and it might be a weird question or whatever, but because I don't know, it seems weird, right? And I'm not being an idiot or anything, but and I know you've probably been asked this before. It's like if I'm in a relationship and I'm having issues, or I want to learn more about how to be better in a relationship or whatever, then why would I go to someone that's not even in a relationship?
That's a great one, and I've had that before too, by the way. I've had people be so rude, and like they're like, oh, so you must be married, and when I'm not, they're like, oh. I'm like, the experience experience that I have.
No, because you have so much knowledge in what you do, and the stuff that you post on your Instagram is unbelievable, and it's very effective. So you obviously know your shit, but what challenges come to you when you're not in a relationship?
Well, this is the thing. There's still so many like layers. Like, the things that I teach people isn't just about like actually being in a relationship. So I actually coach people that are, consciously single for the first time in their life. They're not jumping from like person to person to person, or they're intentionally dating, which is like really hard for some people to wrap their head around, because so often we just meet someone and we're like, yes, like, oh, there's this person, and they change completely to like try and get the person, and then 6 months later they're like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, suddenly it's like they're not even meant for them, because they weren't even being themselves. They're meant for like Miss Perfect that doesn't exist. So there's so many other challenges. Even at the moment, I'm finishing my book, so I'm writing a book called The Conscious Breakup, and that was all about going through my breakup, of like actually being conscious of what I was feeling and what I was dealing with, and that I wasn't going to go run back to drinking on the weekends and snorting cocaine and doing all those things, and actually how I held space for myself now. And it's interesting because even though I'm single, I'm definitely like the happiest I've ever been, because I'm in a space where when I meet people, I'm so conscious, and I can see myself not repeating the old patterns, that I'm like, okay, I've got this now. Like, I know.
Yeah. And so, so, I mean, it sounds like your man's just around the corner.
Maybe. Stay tuned.
Yeah. And you know what? And it's interesting, because we spoke about it just before, but in my experience, in terms of what I see with my clients and whatnot, and even relationships that I've had in the past, the unspoken thing in relationships, where you have situations where you don't, it's like, oh, I won't talk about that now, I'll just leave that for later, and it just keeps festering. What's your idea in terms of good communication to be able to make sure that there's nothing unsaid?
Well, this is the thing, that one of like the biggest reasons for divorce is people create what's called a runaway threat. So over time, they basically train their brains to see their partner as a threat instead of someone who's loving, because it's all the built up resentment and all the unsaid things, and then that person in the end just triggers them. And you see it with divorce couples when they come in for divorce counseling and they can't even be in the same room with each other anymore. Like they just absolutely can't stand each other. So really, like, if you want to get to that point where you're not leaving things like unsaid, part of it comes down to finding safety within like your own body and finding a way to like regulate yourself and work on that yourself. So like meditation, yoga, all that kind of stuff.
I don't want to, just for those people that don't know what self-regulate themselves mean, or regulate themselves, what does that actually mean?
So self-regulate means like you can basically, when you feel yourself in a state of like fight or flight, or like triggered and you're feeling like wanting just to, I don't know, like react really, that you're able to take back control of your emotions and calm yourself back down into a parasympathetic nervous state. So like you're relaxed and calm, you can talk logically. When you're in a dysregulated state, and you're actually wired for protection, so you can't actually connect properly with another person because they're a threat. So we want to bring it back to the parasympathetic nervous system. So in that state, that's where we can actually build connection. So self-regulation is all about doing that process yourself and not relying on your partner going like, I'm stressed, you fix it. It's, I've got to calm myself down and then I can talk to you.
Okay, so let's say you're in an argument, right? Or you're in a disagreement. And in that disagreement, there's obviously both parties are, what do you call it, dysregulated? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Dysregulated. So basically, I mean, in layman's terms, both partners are totally disconnected. They're just totally in their head and they're fucking fight and flight. Mm-hmm. And in that situation, this voice comes in and goes, oh, you need to self-regulate. Like, you know, like how would you do that in the moment? Like, what do you do? Because this is where I find, even with myself, this is where I fuck up the most, is that when emotions are high and there's a disagreement, or there's some sort of, you know, there's some sort of tension, there's some sort of heat, where I tend to go is I don't avoid, but I just pull back and I don't say anything. I just listen and I wait for the fire to be over, you know. And even though sometimes that works, for me it doesn't really, because I'm not really speaking my truth. I'd rather just not speak my truth and stay away from the fire than actually step into the fire and speak my truth. So I know there's all different people, that all different dynamics, but let's say in my case, if I'm conflict avoidant, what would I do in that situation?
So the best thing that you can kind of do is, part of you is doing what it's meant to be doing, and you're going back and you're self-regulating and you're like practicing that pause to not react and make lasting damage. But ultimately, like, and whether you're spiritual or not, I just find this helps, like asking yourself and being like, how would my higher self deal with this? And when you kind of like call upon that power and you're like, okay, honey, you know what? I love you. I also just want to share with you. You know, you find a way, like, you know how to say it. It's just about reconnecting and recalling that power back to yourself rather than the external environment.
And Simi, what's the biggest issue that you see at the moment in terms of relationships? What's like the top one or two things where like people are just really struggling with?
It's interesting because, like, whether you believe in destiny or not, I think that me going through my breakup was the best thing that ever happened, because now I'm in a space where, like, I can help these people. And it's something I never thought about before. And it's the number one thing I see people struggling with, where they're hitting like their early 30s, mid 30s, and not only are they single, but they have no way out. Like, they're just repeating the same patterns again and again, to the point that like a lot of people that I've spoken to and a lot of clients, like, they're not even trying to have sex with anyone. Like, they're just that wired for protection and that viscerally like terrified because of not having dealt with their childhood and not having dealt with any form of past relationship hurt, that like it scares me a little bit how much like people just aren't even trying to connect anymore, or as soon as they are connecting, they're just self-sabotaging it completely and running away.
No, it's very true. I see very similar things at the moment, even though I don't really work mainly in relationships, but I definitely see a very similar trend. And so if you, and okay, give me another couple. Like what else are you seeing? Like what else are you seeing where clients just walk away and you're just like, yeah, because actually, you know what, that whole thing of repeating patterns, like we all do it, don't we? We're just like, you can, whether it's relationships or whatever, but I find with myself, I'm like, I look at certain things in my life and I just sit there thinking, Tom, you literally done this 10 times before. How the fuck are you not learning your lesson? And so in relationships, it's the same thing. You keep creating the same dudes, or you keep creating the same women, or whatever it might be. And surely at some point you'd pull back and go, the fuck am I doing? Like, maybe I need to choose someone that is totally not who I actually think is right for me.
And I think the biggest thing with this, where I see people struggle with it, is if I asked people to, you could very easily think of a friend who's single and tell me exactly what they're doing wrong. Or even another couple, and you're like, this is their problem, this is their this, but we can't do it ourselves. Like, it's so hard to be like, fuck, like, what am I actually doing wrong? Like, I remember, like, even when I was like in my previous relationship, I was like, yeah, like before I actually even went through like my whole healing journey itself, I was like, no, I'm conscious in my relationship. I'm this in my relationship. And I look back and I'm like, bitch, really? like you were not at all. But I fully had the self-belief that I was, you know? So yeah, I think it takes a lot of being honest.
A lot of what?
A lot of being really brutally honest.
Brutally honest, yeah. I mean, that's definitely one thing that I'm really good with myself, just being brutally fucking honest, like looking in the mirror and just going, Tommy, come on, mate, like, the fuck are you doing? But with when it comes to relationships, ultimately, would you agree that when the moment that you start blaming your partner for anything, that it becomes like you're going down a shitty road, because what you're saying is that your partner has power over you to do something, or I mean, what's talk to me about the blame game, that only if my partner was like this, then blah 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 blah.
So a lot of the time we kind of project onto them and go like, they just need to do this and they need to do that, and a lot of the time we're projecting parts of our own shadow like actually onto them. So it's like a lot of the time I have people come to me and they say like, I wish my partner was just like a warm, loving space. Like, I just get so angry and frustrated at him. And I'm like, you get angry and frustrated at him. Are you being that warm, loving space? Like, you have to model it back and forth to each other. It's got to be a two-way street. It takes a lot of inner work to be able to get to that point. And I genuinely believe that like it is just an extension of our own personal journey, where once you learn how to be truly self-compassionate and like show up for yourself on your bad days and understand, when you're angry, how do you hold space for yourself, then you can kind of extend that to that other person. So it's always kind of got to come from within before it can be received.
Yeah, yeah. And how important do you reckon, because I always wonder about this, how important do you reckon the actual intimacy and the, sex part of a relationship, how important is that?
Huge. So I actually teach sacred sex as well. And sacred sex, it's basically mindful sex, and it's all about kind of putting you guys back into like a parasympathetic nervous system state, like I kind of spoke about before, so that you can connect. And when you have that connection and you're both coming down to that baseline and having like this really meaningful regular sex, it actually helps throughout your entire relationship keep you guys in that parasympathetic nervous state. So now when things bad do happen, because they do, you're not going to take it so personally. You're not going to fly off the wall over like a 10-minute late car ride. Like all these things that we kind of normally would pick up when we're stressed start to like fall away. So having that regular connection and regular sex definitely helps.
Gotcha. And so wait, what you were just talking about, what just went through my head, so are you actually there with the couple as they're fucking having a root?
Yeah. No. No, I'm not. Your face dropped so bad then. No, so I teach workshops.
Oh, no.
In the workshops,
Yeah.
I basically, it's not tantra and it's not Kama Sutra, because they're very removed things from what they once were. So I prefer to use a different name out of respect. But I teach a lot about like the philosophy of like removing what keeps us in our head during sex and not connected. And then I teach all like the theory and get them to do things like eye gazing and like setting an intention and being like purposeful about it, learning how to breathe together. And then I do get demonstrations of like some of the poses and stuff that they do, but everyone is fully clothed, and I do them every couple of months in Melbourne, and I'm about to have an online version drop because I know a lot of people have said to me they're terrified to come but they want to learn.
Yeah, right. And so in these workshops, is it men and women, or is it mainly women?
No, so I only teach for couples. So my personal belief with it is like when you have like sacred sex and it's like really intentional and you're both really present, you end up so connected to each other that I think that I just have that preference of teaching couples of how to get that deeper connection, rather than people kind of going out and having a one night stand and they're practicing like this sacred sex and the other person's not, and they're getting like overly connected and invested. So just at the moment, I think in my mind that just sits a bit better with me, and it seems to be working.
Yeah, that's so cool. And so where are you going to take this whole thing? So you've got JAH Academy, which is JAH Academy, and you're very influential on the old gram, which is very, very cool. And it's so, I love your posts because they're so simple, but they're super effective. So where do you want to take this whole thing? Because obviously, I mean, in my life as well, where as my businesses evolve, it only happens because I'm evolving. And so I'd love to know where you're taking your shizzle.
Well, it's so funny you actually say that, because since my breakup, which was in November, because I was being really conscious about going through my breakup, JAH Academy, like it's had the app, but as a business, it's been at a big standstill until probably like the last 6 weeks when I'm like, yeah, like I'm super good now, like I'm good to go. So we're actually in the process of filming 6 online courses, because I've narrowed down that people come to see me for one of 6 things, and a big part of my work is there's a lot of resistance. I know that even for the male clients I do get, that they say that it took a lot of strength to come and see me. So I want people to be able to sit at home and do it at an affordable price, do it themselves, cry on their own if they need to, have that space. So yeah, that's currently the plan. There'll be 6 available online courses, and then hopefully in the future I would love to do my own kind of training for other people to learn how to do what I do.
What you do, yeah. And so what you do, is that something that you've built yourself, or is it like a combination of?
So I studied my master's in holistic counseling, but I found limitations with it. So there were parts that I didn't agree with. So I've done further study. I did my diploma of tantra. I did my shadow work practitioner's course. I've gone on and done many other courses and modalities that what I think help people, and it's basically actually all the tools and strategies I found to kind of unfuck myself that I've gone and individually plucked at and then kind of put it all together to teach what I teach. And yeah.
And you know what, the other thing that I sort of want to know from you is what is it that you like? What's the part to your work that you fucking love?
It's interesting because it's when I get and I get them quite a lot, a comment or a message, and they'll be like, no one taught me how to have a healthy relationship. No one modeled this for me. And the fact you're giving me hope, the fact that you're making me be fuck yeah, I'm going to try is life changing, because suddenly they've gone from I'm unlovable to oh, hang on, I don't know how to have a healthy relationship, but I also don't know how to drive a car, but I can learn, you know what I mean? So it's the fact I'm giving people these little glimpses of hope that they can go out and make changes, which you can. Me dating now compared to me dating 5 years ago is insanely different. Now I get so excited when I meet a guy and it's red flags, and I'm sorry, this isn't going to work, and I walk away and I'm yes, rather than oh my god, why doesn't he love me? You know. So it's I love that
so
other
you know
people
straight
experiencing
away.
that. Yeah, I'm pretty good at picking them, but I also understand that no one's perfect. So I've got to I kind of have to catch myself sometimes where I'm oh, I'm extending the hand a little bit too much here. So it's a constant balance.
Yeah. And what triggers the fuck out of you as a relationship coach or as a holistic relationship coach? It doesn't even have to be about relationships. I'm just interested.
The pattern for me that I'm oh, I can't stand that is when I see a couple and one of the partner goes oh, I'm so tired, and the partner goes you're tired, I'm exhausted, how do you think I feel? And I'm I don't know what it is. I can't figure out what personally in it, why it triggers me, but I'm just I just am so angry for them. I'm just show some sympathy.
Yeah. So what should they say? Let's say I'm coming home and I'm honey, I'm so tired. I've had the biggest day. I'm fucking so tired. What should the other person say?
I think that they should offer some form of sympathy of oh, why, what's up, what's happened, talk to me, and then being is there anything I can do to help you right now? So offering and it might just be can you make me a cup of tea? Can you just give me a cuddle? Can you just, and then it's connection instead of dismissing the other person's emotions.
Yeah. Very cool. And then, you know what? The other thing I sort of want to know as well, because I just love picking your brain, because you're constantly around relationships and, shit relationships, good relationships. What's the I guess the biggest transformation you've seen, and obviously you don't have to name names or anything like that, but what's the biggest transformation you've seen with your client, with a client?
It's quite interesting, and I'm going to be honest here. A lot of people that are in a relationship and that have come to see me, a lot of them often aren't very successful, because even when they've come, it's one person's very reluctant. Someone doesn't want to be there. Mm-hmm. They're doing this as a last bet chance. So that can be very sketchy on getting the results, because someone's already kind of exited, someone's left the building. But in individual,
right. So you're just quickening the process.
I've found that yes, because I can't force the other person to participate with me or want to talk to me, and a lot of the time there's just a wall and they don't want to talk about it. They're just there to tick the box that we tried it and it's done and it's over. And I find very rarely are two people there like, yes, like we want to do this. So that's quite challenging. However, I find that like when I get one person from the couple come, it's been like very successful. The biggest transformation I've probably seen is I had a client who came and saw me, was like miserable, like super devastated after leaving like this really toxic partnership, and actually was coming to see me to try and get them kind of back. And obviously I can't be like, that's not a great idea, like I can't tell her what to do, but we were able to like build enough knowledge in herself and enough self-understanding that her journey is like incredible. And like our last session, she's like, she was dating someone else at this point and it had been like 8-9 months, and she was like, oh, you know, but like I need to go over here to do, like she's moving across the country, like I need to go over here, so unfortunately it's going to have to end. It's just what like realistically makes sense for us, and blah blah blah. And like she was so just like matter of fact about it. Like she was like, yeah, like it just consciously, it doesn't line up with our like long-term vision. And I was like, I'm sorry, like who are you? You know what I mean? Like, I was so proud of her, because it was like it hurt her, 100%, but she was not, it was no longer like I'm always unloved, I'm always fucked, I'm always this, I'm always. It actually was like looking at the one situation in front of her like wholeheartedly and understanding that it wasn't aligned with like the best version of herself.
That's so good. Well, I mean, look, what else? I don't know. Is there anything else you'd want to tell the people, the listeners of the BS Machine, man, to fucking leave us with some epic advice. Tell us some epic advice about relationships. What's like, give us some good shit.
That you're putting me on the spot, Tommy. I think that most connection is kind of lost by like the bullshit of like what's around us, and everyone has the opportunity and the capability to kind of like see through that. And the more you come back to yourself and nurture your own self and your self journey and put time into you, it's actually going to strengthen not only like your relationships with yourself, but also with others, and get you to a place of present and connected. The end.
That's some good shizzle. Because ultimately, I mean, from most of the stuff that you're saying, it always comes back to ultimately the number one relationship is the relationship with ourselves, isn't it? And then Absolutely. Everything outside of that is so fucking secondary.
If you've got two people that are dedicated in like I give, you give, if you've got two people that are dedicated in I feel myself so I can give to you, then you French kiss, like that's the goal. You're both nurtured, you're both looking after each other, you're able to be connected and disconnected with ease. You know, it's not all together all the time, and it's not away from each other all the time. It's a constant back and forth.
Yeah, that's good. Love it. Well, thanks, Simi. Thanks for coming on the BS Machine. It was an honour to have you on. And
thanks for having me, Tommy.
Yeah, I've definitely learned some stuff, and I'll put all Simi's stuff in the podcast notes, and hopefully we'll share a couple of reels from this potty. But yeah, if you're listening on YouTube, feel free to share the potty and do all that stuff. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcast app, give us a review, give us a share, and I'll put all the places where you can find Simi at JAH Academy. It'll be in the potty notes, and even her Instagram, where she's killing it, man.
Amazing.
She's like an influencer.
Totally, darling. Totally.
All right, so thanks, Simi, for coming on, and absolute honour to have you, and you fucking rock, and thanks for giving us all your insight.
Thanks, Tommy, and thanks for letting me swear and be myself on your podcast.
No whacking furries, baby.
Love it.
All right, see you, legend. Thanks heaps.